Well, amazingly, we're coming at you again. A slight tangent with you on this Tuesday evening. Arthur O'D in the house. Hello, Arthur.
Hi, Joe.
Nick McCarthy, hello to you.
Hello.
And William O'Callaghan. Hello.
My full legal name there, JoSEPH Molloy.
Of the Hurling Pod, amongst other parishes. You're very welcome.
That's all right, yeah.
We had a short email in from Paul, who writes, Dear Joe and Co, challenge accepted. My take on Arthur O'D's eulogy for Joe Molloy is this. Come on. So, you know, that is your vernacular as well.
Oh, sorry, he's writing as me.
Yes.
Well, this is quite the honour. Jesus.
Well, I asked you to do my eulogy if the time comes in the distant future, and so he's...
If you're holding out hope.
Dear. Come on. Ask someone else. I literally don't have an opinion on this.
That's fair. I mean, that
is fair. That is fair.
Burning satire. Right from the jump.
Lots of emails in this week. A slight tangent at offtheball.com. Thank you for the correspondence. In no particular order, and then we'll get to some topics that we have decided to jump off on at least. Dear Joe and Co, long time, first time, which is the approved way to open the email. Long time, first
Joe's
time.
running commentary on the emails as you read them out. Is
dragging. Yeah. Someone analysed
might be
that.
half the show, I think, is the problem.
This is Oren, who signs off yours and meandering thoughts. Sometimes I have something I've always wondered. Do you, journalists / broadcasters in general, not just the Slight Tangent team specifically, do you find it sometimes difficult to criticise or review a poor performance of someone you know might be listening, or someone you have met in your professional / personal lives? For example, would you ever feel a sense of, I've had a real go at X, I wonder will he be pissed off at me? Jesus, I hope she wasn't listening. And when you're being critical, are you always aware this is a human with family, friends, feelings, etc., or just more focused on the analysis you're doing on the radio? Do you wonder, are they going to text you and say, Joe, what's that all about? I thought we were mates. Yours in meandering thoughts, Oren. Interesting question.
Yeah.
I don't know about the thought we were mates parts, but I have encountered this probably more in local radio than in national media, where if you make comments, yeah, you will get responses sometimes from the people who are affected, because I think it affects them more when it's their family members or themselves who are likely to hear it intimately locally, as opposed to something that they might miss that gets a brief mention on national news. I always think there's a line in this, lads, where you can analyse fairly about a performance on the pitch, or as long as it doesn't go into the realm of a personal attack onto somebody where they genuinely could feel slighted. You know, where your emailer is saying there that they could message you and say, look, you know, I've got a family here, or this is affecting me, what you've said about me. I think most people, even in amateur sports as well as professional sports, will be okay as long as you give a fair commentary on what you've seen. I think when it verges into the other, they're more than fair to contact you and say, that's unfair. But I have got messages, yeah. More so I've got messages about maybe, say, pundits that you would have had on the show talking about a game and what they would have said, as opposed to something you've said yourself.
I've never had anybody ever in any capacity doing this job for however many years now reach out to me.
Mm. That's kind of mad. Just a little bit.
Yeah.
It's a long time.
No journalist after something you've written, maybe saying the Sunday pay-per-view, you're talking about a piece that's been written, no one's ever come back to you and said you were unfair about my piece or anything like that. Because I assume their colleagues who would have your number. You know?
I don't think so.
Maybe they feel you're above it.
Well, text O'Callaghan and said.
O'Callaghan will apologise. That Molloy fella. He'll think he's right.
I guess language is important, certainly. Like, he'll be disappointed with that. He had not a great game versus he was absolutely rubbish.
Yeah.
That's a part of it. But then you can be very boring in your language.
Yeah, but I do find that, like, you should have a I suppose, a way of doing that is also respectful, and the person, like, think of them as the human being with the family and so on, right? And ultimately you're talking about their actions on a sports field.
Yeah.
You know, I do think that, but there's no doubt about it that you have a different language for somebody in Ireland than you would for somebody outside. Like, even, like, and I was thinking about this in reading the email and being self-critical about it. There's no reason that should be different. You know, like, I called Pep Guardiola an arsehole on the newsround last night, and it was a throwaway line, and it was more a joke than anything else. But at the same time, was there any need for that in the in the way the conversation was going in my criticism of him. There really isn't, you know, but I would not do that about an Irish-based sports person.
No.
But I think that's right, as opposed to I'm pulling my punches for the Irish people because I fear there'd be backlash. I think you should probably do it for everyone.
Yeah.
You know?
Is that because you think Pep is above it, or is it because you think he'd have more of an effect on, say, a League of Ireland manager?
I suppose you don't think about it, is the thing, and it feels like a different world. It feels like almost, especially when you're talking about Premier League, you feel like you're talking about people who aren't even in the same world, you know. So you're careful about what you say from a legal point of view, but in terms of insulting or anything like that, you know, it's almost like you're not talking about a real person. But I think why not be the same for everybody? You know?
In the world of Premier League, there's just so much noise that it is irrelevant. It's just white noise. Whereas in the world of analysing GAA,
yeah,
your voice on this platform is a lot louder.
Absolutely. But
I
still think there's a thing about being respectful. And to be honest, I do think if you do that properly, if you could stand over any backlash you might get by saying ultimately I was doing my job, I really like that's what I believe, that's what I have to say, and you're doing it in a non-personal way, then I kind of wouldn't be too bothered by the backlash. You know, I don't know, haven't had too much of it. Will, you're probably the only person in the room that sort of had that.
Yeah, look, I think it's probably more difficult sometimes for pundits than it is for radio or TV presenters, because generally we're going to be there to try and extract info or opinion from the people who we're speaking to generally. But I wonder how difficult it is for someone who has friendships that they've built with teams, because generally now I think pundits are coming from a younger age and just out of the game, and they're almost being sought for, let's get someone who's in touch with the modern game and get them straight onto a panel. I wonder how that affects you if you've shared a dressing room with someone for the last 10 years and then you're thrust onto radio or onto the TV and you're expected to say something that's not just banal niceties, and therefore you may well have to go in quite hard on your mates.
I think a lot of times they don't
Leads to it
go
not
in
happening.
hard on their mates, and they're not very good pundits as a result, you know. Generally, I'd view anyone recently retired with great suspicion when they're in the punditry game. In those instances, they can lean into the fact that they have great relevance and they can tell stories or give insights into personalities. Don't be relying on them to deal in harsh truths. I would, though, in answer to the question, be acutely conscious when I'm on air of families listening. That person probably listening, even if not live, someone might send to them. It just crosses my mind, it does. Even I find we talk about Roy Keane all the time, and he's that interesting, almost unique subsection whereby he is so big.
Yeah, he's the Pep I'm talking about earlier, but also has the family listening.
I think of his family in Cork. I do. They cross my mind.
Sorry, I'm not
yeah, but you know, like, there's times we've been talking about Keane and quite dismissively. You know, if his, I don't mean me personally, but just us. There's times where like his punditry has been ravaged. Richie McCormick, not a fan of Roy Keane punditry, for instance. And I thought to myself, oh, he's got family here, and let's be fair as well.
But is that not something that Richie should be able to say
Yes,
without people taking offence? Like, that's what I was actually going to ask next is, we've kind of answered in some ways whether, you know, you pull punches or, you know, I think there's an element that you have to do it fairly, but I'd say sometimes you lean towards not wanting to insult as well. I mean, one, as opposed to anyone in particular. Is that right? Do you know what I mean? I suppose that's the part of the question as well. It's like, should we pull our punches when it comes to analysis or criticism of sporting behaviour, while also always keeping it in the context of it's only a game?
Like, you don't want to be totally boring and nice either, you know? Like, we're in a slightly unusual world. It's not quite show business, but, you know, don't be boring and all that either is also a rule. It's funny on the... it can depend on your point of emphasis. Like, do you see your duty as 100% to the listener, or if you're a writer, to the reader, or do you think some of the duty of care applies to the people you're talking about? Like, so, I bumped into Paul Kimmage recently, and we were at the Aviva, and he was talking about different autobiographies and punches pulled. And I was saying, but look, in fairness, there's a loyalty and a respect that they would feel to people they've played with, not to divulge X, Y, and Z. I'm not talking about doping or anything. I'm just talking about, you know, secrets of the dressing room at large. And he said it before, and he would often say, yeah, but you're cheating the reader. Like, so he would be someone who'd say 100% it's the reader, nothing else.
Or don't do the book.
Yeah, but they offer good cash.
The money's too good.
No, but like, but you know what I mean? But then you're open to the criticism.
You're open to the criticism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think rightly so. And I think that's like, so I'd be completely on Kimmage's side in this. Is like, you know, if you're going to write a book that's being, you're telling me and you're asking me for €20 or whatever to tell me that this is your story, then it should be your story, or else I'm going to be critical of it. You know, so I understand your question, but you know, you either tell the story or you don't in terms
fair.
of a book. But in terms of an interview or something like that, you know, in terms of as an interviewer, I think you should have a duty to care to. It's almost the duty of care is to everyone.
Yeah.
to everyone.
And what about an analysis? Do you have any duty of care to the people you're talking about?
I think there's, unless because you don't, more often than not, I always think it's kind of highly sort of preposterous. Because we don't know at all what we're talking about. That's always got to find. I know when I'm talking about things. I'm like, but you know what I mean? Like, you're talking about something that, like if we're talking about the decision making of Guardiola. So, say yesterday, for instance, it was fantastic, and we can laud it as fantastic. But then, so many people will speak when there's a mistake, and you criticise his decision making. And it's like, hold on for a second. Like, it's such a ludicrous position to put yourself in, that you should have some sort of authority. So if you're going to assume that you do have a right to talk about this in some sort of informed fashion, I think you kind of, that to me is just, it's very odd. It's a very, very odd thing to elevate yourselves up into, if you know what I mean. Like, we don't have any sort of, if it was any sort of walk of life, you know, a surgeon, for instance, and it's like, well, I've seen ER. It's like, I've seen a little bit of this and that.
Do you know on that one?
Because
there's that famous Brian Kerr clip that they use in the Saturday panel where, you know, he would say, you know, I never told a plumber how to do his job, but if I had €1 for, you know, it was something along those lines, the amount of plumbers who told me how to do a job. But the counterpoint to that, or the surgeon point, is, how many matches do you watch? I probably am watching 3 to 4 matches a week, times 50, because it seems to be on non-stop. Let's call it a flat 200 matches a year, and more during World Cups and all that. So, you know, and that's for the last 20, 30 years. So do the maths. We're talking thousands of matches. So you're
like XG, you were.
Yes. So you watch. So if you were to watch a surgeon or a plumber do a routine piece of work 10,000 times, and then the 10,001st time you saw something which struck you as out of kilter with the previous 10,000, you would then be allowed to say, "Hang on there, surgeon. That's a bit unusual." Or I see something.
It's
odd
a
about
weird
that.
thing to suggest that only football managers know anything about football.
No, that's not my point. My point is to suggest that we, say collective, people talking about, would know enough to question them in terms of their decision making. And I don't mean someone gets a decision wrong, that's fine to say that's wrong. But we have no appreciation, generally speaking, for how they got to that point.
True.
We have absolutely no.
No, I
and
take
you're
that
talking
point.
about like 200 matches a year or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, God knows how long, how short a time a football manager will fit in 200 matches in terms of watching in a year. I mean, within a month, less.
I know we feed off scraps, and what's worse is like the outright arrogance with which we, not just us, but like the media world, condemn.
But everybody's usually in opposition in these conversations. Like, surely at some point you're getting to a point where it's like, I have an opinion on this, Joe has an opinion on it, Will has an opinion on it, and we're airing out that conversation. And there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. One of us might be right, you know.
It's not
but
wrong.
It's kind of like that. That's ultimately what sport is, though, isn't it? In terms of fandom, anyway. Coverage is about the discussion around the game.
So so if we're talking about within the realms of the question, we make that unburdened by any expectation that we have to deliver on it. And so we can make those comments and make those kind of arguments and opinions without anything of actually having to stress test them or kind of explore them in actual practice. And the inverse of that to me is exactly what we're talking about by players. And why don't they divulge everything? Because they've been there and they know the ins and outs. You're asking, it's the same way, like, would you, if you were writing a book, would you divulge everything that was said in production meetings?
Absolutely. But I think that's one of the reasons why, not that in a parallel universe where people were interested in my life.
But they would, if you wrote a tell-all book.
Sorry, you if you were to do a book on Off the Ball,
it would fly.
And you published conversations you and I had that I did not want public, then I'd be very upset with you. You'd have it.
So I have to trust my memory a lot better.
Well, that's true. But in all this, like, you have a duty to the reader. I guarantee you, when push came to shove, if you were doing the book, you'd also feel a duty to me and to Arthur and to Will and to everybody here. So then you'd massage.
I agree, and I wouldn't do it. But what I'm saying is, if
I'm offering you 200 grand
if I wrote
to write epoxy off the ball.
But if I wrote the epoxy off the ball version that you want me to write, who the hell would read it? It'd be crap.
It's not your problem. Penguin are paying you.
Your name,
Duty of care to Penguin.
I'll just breeze through a few emails very quickly. We got bogged down in that last one. For instance, we had an email saying, "Hi," from Thomas. This isn't actually a topic for a slight tangent. It's the only email address I know for you.
I would say it's our most publicised email address, is it? Maybe it is on the show, actually.
What else is there? How would you email off the ball?
Info at off the ball. I'm not sure, actually, is the truth. There you go, right? Apologies, Thomas.
I've
Go
never had
on.
to email us, Joe.
Anyway, we're
McCarthy.
breaking this person's confidence by putting it out on a slight tangent, are we?
No. Thomas says, I want to send a request. Please send Kenny Cunningham to France later this year as your on-the-ground rugby correspondent. I think it would be amazing. He's a joy to listen to, whether he's talking about football or any topic. Imagine Kenny speaking French. That's all. I'm not a huge sports fan. I only ever watch the rugby, hurling, and a bit of golf. I always find
More
your
than
shows-
most people who work at the show.
entertaining, and the pundits are always top shelf. Keep up the excellent work. Kind regards, Thomas. Grania,
I'd be up for that, Kenny.
I tied in with Kenny's cuisine as well. Have him
Indeed,
try
yeah.
food.
Who feels too young not to know what this means at 32. Grania says, "Hi, Joe and Co. I feel obliged to write that." Good, Grania. I think the phrase football hipsters was used on this week's show. What defines a football hipster? I have a horrible feeling this is going to be like that clip doing the rounds last week where somebody was asked, "What is woke?" And they were completely flummoxed. It's, a football hipster. What is a football hipster?
PSG are playing Bayern in the Champions League. Everyone's watching that game. Football hipster sitting down watching Porto against Inter.
Because they prefer the tactical nuance of
Exactly.
what's on offer.
They appreciate football at a higher level than the popcorn football that is what the rest of us would pick.
Yes.
Probably going to wear some kind of obscure jersey as
Yeah.
well.
I
Van
suppose.
Howley supporter.
What was the word that Graham Potter described Reece James as playing as opposed to, or as Chilwell? He called Chilwell not a wing back, but something, a lateral or something like that. That's being a football hipster, isn't it?
Yeah.
Making up kind of weird names for positions.
Inverting the pyramid is sitting beside their toilet and is there for casual reading for guests that turn up in their house as well. That kind of thing.
Yeah. That
It's not an exhaustive list, but you probably know a football hipster in your life.
Well, I guess it's like a hipster applied to
Who
football.
likes football?
Yeah. Yeah.
They like football before it got popular.
Which of us is most hipster-y in life, not just
It's not
football?
me.
Why did we all look at Arthur?
I'm off the grid.
That's a very hipster thing. Isn't it?
No, it's not. I don't think so.
What's your only football jersey?
I had loads of football jerseys.
Yeah, I've only ever seen you wear one.
What was it?
Loads of them. I don't wear them.
Ireland one.
I don't wear them.
New Ireland one.
The blue Ireland one. That was.
That's
Very nice, yeah.
Yeah, no, very nice, very nice.
It's
Would have
just
been
because
hipster.
I'm sartorially astute.
Oh,
Don't try and-
that.
My only football history jerseys of the last however many years are two retro Villa jerseys. That's a little bit.
Supporting Villa's a bit hipster, isn't it?
That just happens though. If I decided at 25,
At the time, it wasn't.
Fair enough.
Paul
It was
McGrath
very
fans,
populist at the time.
There's a generation of them, isn't there?
Yeah.
very.
Hipster on the news round. The closest we'll come to it.
Somebody bemoaning the demise of the Heineken Champions Cup was another discussion point, which has been bubbling away, I would say, on the team, behind the scenes, and occasionally front of house as well for a while now. We have Leinster against Leicester live on Friday evening. Tune in.
Looking forward to it already, yeah.
Yeah. Where are we then, the Heineken Champions Cup, in our collective imaginations?
I quite like the last 8 for the Champions Cup this year because you've got the South African teams who are coming in strong and are saying that they're prioritising trying to win the Champions Cup as opposed to the URC. The Northern Hemisphere sides who are left are all previous champions. Last week we had the excitement of La Rochelle coming back when they looked like they were about to lose to a Gloucester side who were painful in the pool stages against Leinster. I think the pool stages of the last 2 seasons have really hurt the competition.
Yeah.
But when we get to this stage and it's the knockouts, if you're a rugby fan, you really look forward to it from the quarterfinals on. I think that's where I'm at. I find it hard to get excited about the pool stages because of the format and because of teams, say, like not even trying in away games. It's a trickier sell than it used to be when it was about getting top of the ladder to qualify into the last 6, into the last 8.
perfect competition.
It was great.
It was a
Cutthroat.
perfect. Every game mattered. There was so much drama in it. Now it's like, what can you do? There's nothing you could do if teams decide they're not going to take a competition seriously. But I don't know. It's really frustrating. There's a few other things going for it. I honestly think that Munster being where they are massively affects it from an Irish point of view. I think Leinster have been so far ahead of the other Irish teams. I just think that there was no excitement or buzz about Munster's game. I think most people thought they were going to lose You know, they were away in South Africa, which feels so, like, it is literally distant, but it feels it from a kind of an interest point of view or something. It just felt like a different world or something, you know? And I just think that there was so much in the kind of Rog O'Connell story, you know, and even that kind of like fed down into the Earls and O'Matney and all like that. And it's just sort of fading away, I think. And I think Munster were the Heineken Cup in many ways, weren't they? Like, you know, think of Stuart Barnes and how in love with Munster he was back when Sky had the competition, you know? They were the heart and soul of it.
Yeah.
And it doesn't seem to exist anymore. And then you just take, like, I don't know, I've no interest in any of the English clubs anymore. I don't know. The French clubs feel a little bit like, you know, La Rochelle will be the big club for the next 3 or 4 years, and before that it was Toulon, and before that it was
Toulouse now are back.
Yeah, Toulouse are back. That is actually, you know what, a genuinely good thing. And look, I think the fact that Leinster have struggled to win it in recent years and have, you know, many heartbreaking final hurdle falls, I think helps keep that interest alive until they win it again. And it's obviously getting harder with South African teams, but I don't know, I feel like the weekend comes and goes at the moment in a way that I feel 10 years ago it took over.
Yeah. Anecdotally, I would sense people have really checked out of the tournament in a shocking way that I just never thought would happen. You know, you just sort of assume things will progressively get better somehow and bigger out of the Champions League. I think people have checked out big time.
In a strange sort of way, and I don't know, from an outsider point of view, say, it always feels to me, from the Leinster point of view, that almost winning it now is kind of par.
Well, sorry, the other point I was going to make is along those lines. I do think if you take the noughties, it was just the perfect, Irish provinces pitched in at the perfect level. In that Munster, there was a great sense of possibility, but it was never easy. It was still like miracle matches to qualify.
It was a saga to get there, yeah.
Miracle matches to qualify required superhuman efforts, but then also a real sense of possibility of winning the thing if things went their way, and a kind of culmination of 06, 08. Whoa.
Yeah, after a Mayo-esque almost, loads of Sob Neil back and
all of that stuff.
O'Gara's miss against Northampton, and that's before you even get to like the mad semi-finals and quarter-finals.
And then there were the Leinster years where, again, that was thrilling in its own way, because the route to 09, things like the Bloodgate game, 6-5, amazing. You know, and then Munster match, and then
come back with Northampton, all that,
and then that kind of morphed into Leinster excellence of 12 and 11, the Northampton game where they came back from the dead, Johnny Sexton's finest hour. So that was all kind of thrilling, and we're now at a point, I'd say, last 5, 6, 7 years, in that the format has dissolved for a lot of people. The group stages are gone. The BT, well, I think I really like the coverage. It's not in as many Irish homes, and therefore it's just not as front of house. And we're at a point where now Munster have, it feels like, no chance of winning the thing, and it's just a case of are they going to bow at quarterfinals or last 16, and they can do enough to get through group stages, but it's like there's a cloud over it. There's no sense of possibility, which was there.
Yeah, exactly.
And with Leinster, it's like it's not competitive enough all the way through until they either win it or they lose at the death, and it's this unsatisfactory, but hang on, they were the best team we've ever seen for 51 weeks of the year, and now they lose to Saracens, they lose to La Rochelle, and it's like, you know, but so...
And even if they do win it, even though it'll only be a 5th title, you go into the season with the expectation that really Leinster, with 17 members of a Grand Slam winning team, should be winning this tournament. So when they do, like, as exciting as it'll be and as full as the Aviva will be, it won't be the same as 09.
It won't be 09, and to be fair, nothing can be on 09. Even winning the Grand Slam this year was not 09. 09, everyone's running off in 50 different directions, losing their mind, hair on fire. Irish rugby's in a better place now. It was more job well done against England, shaking hands. But the point, what was the point I was making? Oh yeah, for instance, against Leicester this Friday, like, this is a quarter final of a European Cup, and it's just like there'll be no great euphoria when Leinster trounced them. And then Toulouse in Dublin, that was Leinster's best performance of the year last year. You'd expect again, this is Toulouse, but it's Leinster are so bloody good, you'd expect them just to win that. So there aren't that many high points in Leinster's journey towards either winning or the crashing defeat.
Do you not
It's
think
like,
Leinster winning a final in Dublin would
Yeah,
capture
that'd be
the
good.
imagination, though?
Yeah,
If they get to the final.
that will be great. Yeah,
Taking the Irish teams out of it, though.
but there's no high point or memories along the way, really.
It's not like those trips to a hard game won in the south of France in the baking heat of late April, that kind of idea.
Would you guys not have in like 2003, whatever, that sort of era, like if Munster, Leinster got knocked out, you'd watch Wasps to lose in the final. Like there was something alluring about those games, whereas I feel now there's something, I don't know what it is, and maybe it's my own personal interest and it just happens to correlate with yours, Joe, or whatever, but I don't find it as intriguing to watch the other non-Irish teams playing against each other as I would now. And there's going to be rugby fans listening to this, like a hardcore rugby contingent, who are like, what are you talking about? These games are better than ever. But like, that is kind of for the hardcore. It's like, where is that interest from the general sporting public at a time when rugby among the general sporting public is bigger than it's ever been?
But I think
it's a weird drop off.
Well, not to get too much into the minutiae. I think that lack of interest in non-Irish teams is and always has been the Irish rugby fan at large.
Yeah,
there is a core group who love their rugby, but then, I don't think.
You don't think you kind of got to know the club? I got to I knew that Wasps team. I don't know any. I knew that Leicester team. You've seen them every year. They were the same players. Players move more now. There's just all things like that. I don't want to sound like grumpy old man. I don't care. I just it does take away that relationship of like seeing that same Leicester team year in, year out, and always coming up against Munster.
I would disagree. I think this Toulouse team are very identifiable.
Yeah,
That's Saracens' team.
Saracens team was, they registered.
And I wasn't watching at all.
that is true.
Might be just some of your fandom. Like, I thought people were fairly disinterested when the all-French final happened in Dublin as well. So this isn't just a kind of a yesterday or today.
I was at that match, Clermont and Toulon.
Toulon, yeah.
Yeah, and it was a great game, and I have to be honest, I barely watched it. It's like, when you just go to one of those games, you don't have a rooting interest.
Yeah, I remember going, and it felt more like a jolly because everyone was picking up tickets because it was easy to get tickets for it. It was almost like when the all Portuguese Europa League final happened.
I think Racing have sort of, certain figures for Racing have landed. Exeter beating Racing was a fairly forgettable year, but that happens. That was happening 20 years ago too.
I do think and by the way, there's no, I would be more than happy for Friday night to be an absolute thriller at the Aviva and to reignite. This can reignite. The penalty shootout last year was class, and everybody in the country was talking about that on a par as they would have in previous times. You know what I mean? And people really needed Munster to get over the line, but they didn't. But
I think Will's point is bang on the money. The group stages are abysmal now, having once been incredible. But to be fair, the knockout stages will throw up great games. That the rugby hardcore will love all of them, and you will even find yourself watching a few of them.
We shouldn't have a last 16. I really think that quarterfinals, it was like 8 elite teams. It's really hard to get into. You have to really do well in your group, and you wait all the way through the Six Nations then knowing what the quarterfinal is going to be, and you're in for a really good ride of 3 games in 4 weeks to finish off the Heineken Cup.
You shouldn't have a situation where one win and a defensive bonus point is enough to qualify for the last 16. There's just not enough danger when that.
There was a lot of poor teams playing this weekend.
Andrew from Mullingar. Hi Joe and fellow Tangenteers. I love the show, which may come as a surprise to you when you read my topic of discussion. And then Andrew disappointingly writes, apologies for the long-winded email, at which point I was pretty close to hitting delete.
Okay, Joe has summarised
for the apology.
No,
for the long-windedness.
For the long-windedness.
Again, we disagree on this.
For a man in his email who was critiquing others, he may just have held a mirror up to himself and asked, could I have done better? For instance, he wrote, I love sport, obviously. Again, draw a line through that. Unnecessary detail. I won't go through it in painstaking detail, Andrew.
Joe's here critiquing this writing class with Joe Molloy every Tuesday night here on Off the Ball.
I'm joking, really. So
have you done guest lecturing?
I have, actually.
Yeah, I presume you have, Arch.
Where?
I was very good at it.
No. In what, in journalism?
Yeah, but about, I'd say 10 years ago when I was not qualified to do it.
Now that I am, I'm way too big for that crap.
I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it that way. I don't mean it that way. I don't mean
those corporates, man.
I think I knew you did that. I must have been somewhere in the deep recesses of my brain.
Yeah. So anyway, Andrew says, I love sport, obviously. Then don't state the obvious. But anyway, I love sport, obviously, and consume so much sporting podcasts and TV, particularly soccer, GA, and golf. Even though I like listening to certain journalists giving their opinions on matters in their own individual manner, I've become increasingly frustrated when it comes to so-called expert pundits, in brackets ex-players, especially when it comes to football. I understand everybody has their opinions, and you'll think some are good, some others aren't, etc. However, I find myself becoming increasingly frustrated, and I've actually had to block certain pundits from popping up on my Twitter timeline. In particular, Jamie O'Hara, Gabby Agbon-Lahore, etc., as I just get so annoyed at the clickbait rubbish. And despite this, I find other people I follow reacting, which makes me see it, even though I blocked them.
I think he just needs to block one account there, but go on.
He needs to tighten up this email. It used to be just TalkSport that engaged in this pure and utter shite, but now it's everybody. For example, out of pure habit, I turn on Sky Sports News and I'll see the likes of Stephen Warnock on Ref Watch, and I already know what he's going to say before he said it. I think Warnock's okay.
the voice of reason on Ref Watch.
No, he's
good. It's Dermot Gallagher who's the clickbait guy.
Honestly,
agreeing with every decision.
What's the point, asks Andrew. Surely for somebody who's paid to do this, they should be able to see or say something that I can't see, someone who's never played at any level. Punditry either comes in the form of clickbait or just monotonous cliches. I don't find it as bad in other sports. It's largely just soccer. I genuinely think Neville and Carragher are the only ones that bring something to the table, and I'm even starting to get sick of their childish schoolboy frenemies charade. It's an interesting observation. Nearly there. Is the standard just terrible? That is the question. Is the standard of football punditry just actually terrible, or are my expectations unrealistic? I can't help but feel, if I'm right and the standard has gone down, a lot of it is down to football Twitter and fan channels which encourage hyperbole. Do you agree? I'm interested to know what you all think. Lastly...
See, that was the same sentence twice.
Yeah.
Didn't want to point that out.
Yeah.
Football show's coming up here, Joe. Come on.
Lastly, before you assume I'm a grumpy old man who doesn't enjoy anything except writing overly long emails, he didn't put that in. I'm actually a 24-year-old man who doesn't enjoy anything. He saved me with the last line. You won me right back, Andrew. The last line saved it. Keep up the good work. Andrew in Mullingar.
I know Andrew. I can confirm that. He is 24.
I jest, by the way. The length of email was appreciated. It showed...
He made a lot of good points in that email. I couldn't agree with some of it more, to be honest.
Okay. Which part did you find really resonated in your heart?
So I don't know about... I don't know if we need to get into the clickbait style of things. I think there's a lot of different types out there. There's a lot of football media who will be trying to look for different audiences, and that's fine. I think even within TalkSport there's some interesting conversations, and then there's some of that crap.
Arthur's obsessed with Simon Jordan.
He is, yeah. Well, I don't necessarily find him too interesting, to be honest, but it is different, and we should have different voices, and I think you can look into, I think
Simon Jordan's good.
I'm not a fan of him personally. It doesn't, not to say he's not good radio. But delve into an hour with you and Kenny Cunningham, and you can't say, it's not. There's no real good conversation about football out there. I just disagree with that in general. But I would say that we are trending the wrong way. I think I agree with the frenemies thing on Carragher and Neville. They had something really going a couple of years ago. The Monday Night Football stuff was brilliant. It's still there, but it feels like they're leaning on the BS side of things rather than the detailed, interesting, the only ones saying this kind of the only ones doing this kind of punditry. And it's just a pity. And I've talked before about Sky's kind of obsession with everybody having their team and everybody having their corner.
I think it
really
the corner point is.
I think it really.
I think you're wrong.
Away.
I think you're wrong about Neville and Carragher on a Monday. I just think the 2-minute clips packaged up are the frenemies stuff, but actually the core of the show is still lots of analysis. But you're in here on a Monday. I don't know if you're watching it back in full. I guarantee you what you're getting online is the stuff that the producers are funneling, which is frenemy.
Maybe that's all. Maybe that's what we have to say. That and when I say that's what they're leaning towards, I don't necessarily mean Neville and Carragher.
Sorry,
I mean Sky and what they have there.
Because they know that's what's getting clicks and views, though.
Sure, yeah.
The audience gets what it asks for.
And Carragher and Neville know that as well. I think probably Andrew's point, and I'm guessing here slightly, might well be what they've developed online themselves with their own back and forth between each other as well.
Yeah, Carragher will often change his profile pic to slag off Neville.
Neville will
put up Neville drinking a glass of wine.
Yeah, but the Micah Richards on Match of the Day on Sunday, basically...
Saturday, yeah.
Or was it Saturday?
Yeah.
Of course it was, yeah. And Mark Chapman and everyone just laughing at, well, of course it's ridiculous for you to comment on Pep Guardiola celebrating in front of the Liverpool players because, you're Man City basically, and Micah...
And you work for Man City.
And Micah laughing, going, yeah, and Chapman saying, Don't you avoid eye contact. I did think that was like, oh, we're heading into a new territory here where not only is this happening and not only is it now discussed, it's now being like celebrated, and it's supposed to be part of the package that as a consumer I'm meant to find cutesy. I mean, it's like one of those Kevin James movies where they go off and they say, we had a great time making the movie and it's the worst thing you've ever seen. You know, I'm not having a good time here with this little act. I want someone to
Who was
actually,
that for?
I don't know.
No.
That's for Richards. Like
Yeah.
there's and themselves and what, like there's like even Man City fans, like what are they getting out of Richards like refusing to answer a question and them all finding it hilarious? Nobody thinking it's in any way insulting to the people paying him money that he is refusing to engage on anything but positive about the club that he's with. Like, say what you want about Roy Keane, like we talked about this earlier, like, you know, Roy Keane will say as much bad about United as good. And if somebody wants to be, and Keane is probably the one who doesn't care about, he's probably the one who's
I think
pigeonholed into
Scholes
United.
is similar as well on
Scholes,
BT.
grant.
Yeah.
So Scholes will be, his perspective will be United.
I think
right?
Neville. I think
but
Neville
he'll say
is
it
good
both
too.
ways.
Neville will say it both ways too.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I think Neville can sometimes lead to, it can be annoying. Do you know what? There's a co-com element to that. God almighty, when you're watching United matches, it's like, Man City, I remember when Man City scored, had one of the most brilliant first halves I've ever seen a team play, and every bit of analysis was about United's defending for the goals, and it's like, I kind of don't necessarily blame him for that, but I do wonder about what you're trying to get out of your coverage, that every United match has to have the United voice, every Liverpool match has to have the Liverpool voice, and nobody else matters. But look,
Spoken like an Aston Villa fan.
but it's
What
spoken of.
scoreline was
There's
that?
more people who aren't supporters of those two clubs than there are people who are.
What scoreline
Not
was
watching
that?
the match though.
In England?
Not watching the match.
What scoreline was that City United game?
Was that the 6-1 game, I think?
Was it? It
6-3.
was the one recently. I think it was like 3-0 at half time or something.
6-3.
wasn't it?
Oh, it was
Yeah,
a 6-3
I,
game.
I think at a certain point when it gets to bigger numbers, it becomes about the losing team.
It
you know
was.
what I mean?
It was always about the losing team, though. In the commentary,
Like at 1-0, it should be about City's opener.
Yeah.
But I think at 6-0, it should be about United's disintegration.
Yeah, that's fine. But I mean, it was all the way through.
Okay,
It was though. Like I mean, this is true. Is what I'm saying. Like you know.
fair enough.
One point that stood out there, Joe, about the idea of them being paid and then not having opinions of so. You know, the one that really annoys me is pundits who go on and almost revel in their ignorance of not knowing about teams, particularly if they're non-Premier League teams on European coverage. It happened during the World Cup a lot as well. It was like, oh, I don't know about them. Why are you on a panel then? Like, surely it is the lowest bar that you would have to set to be familiar or have done research on the team.
How many people do that? Because we all hear it.
Oh, it
And we
happens
remember
a
it when it
little bit.
happens.
I
But
don't
I've
remember
talked to
it.
pundits who've done games, and it's like they'd be like, it's like I'm doing Morocco tomorrow. I don't know much about it. And then like by the time they're on TV, they will like they take that seriously. But that's just a couple of people that I've talked to. But I have heard the.
It happened
I don't know that
with
guy.
Liam Brady during the World Cup.
I know
particularly happened a few
everyone
times.
knew you were talking about Lee Brady.
But it's not just him though. This happens, definitely on Champions League coverage. Not so much on BT, but I've definitely found it in other broadcasters where legitimately be like, yeah, we don't know a whole lot about them, but we know all about Man United, Liverpool, whoever the team that are playing are. I would have thought with everything that's available now, video-wise, everything you can read, the fact the Athletic has a correspondent on every team under
it's
the planet.
sure.
I don't understand how you could be a paid pundit and probably quite well paid and not know about the teams that you're going to analyse.
I have to say though, I'm the City ambassador, so my opinion here is City.
Yeah,
That
that's
annoys me more.
Yeah,
I don't
that's
know why.
nonsense.
That's just getting my goat up lately.
To his email, though, by the way, I've talked about that before, and I couldn't agree with you more. That's the thing that's driving me mad about all punditry at the moment. But other than that, is punditry actually worse than it was 20 years ago? Or do we just think
It's
that
got to be
everything is
better.
worse than
I think
it
it's
was?
way better. I'd say if we went back now and watched 20 years ago, with the notable exception of the RTE panel, who were just box office, I would think the standards 20 years ago were terrible.
Yeah,
Yeah, I really would think they were awful.
I agree.
Better punditry, but a lot more of it. There's a lot of talk before football games now. I wish it was a little bit shorter, but that's just me.
You don't have to watch it.
No, you don't. That's the thing. Oftentimes I will just tune in
Yeah.
close enough to kick off.
Yeah.
And I'll probably watch the fallout after the game more so than the hour before.
Yeah. As a final quick tangent, how are we feeling that the Easter weekend upcoming marks the start of the GAA Championship?
Perfectly fine with it. Can't wait. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. Like, worry about the rest of the year. But, like, it's going to be great. I can't wait. I'm really looking forward to the Mayor's coming on Sunday. Like, it's going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I think I am as well, actually. It's a box office start, which we don't always
yeah,
get.
exactly. And I know, like, and yeah, because it's going to be so kind of congested in that sort of way, you're going to have great games every weekend. I know it's a nightmare to cover, and you'll probably miss things that you'd like to watch. But, like, that's going to be this. So that'll be this weekend. Does the hurling start the following weekend or the weekend after?
23rd.
So the weekend after. Okay, so there'll be some games in between anyway. But like, so the hurling then, and the Munster Championship, unbelievable week on week.
How irritating? Sorry, irritating is a strong word. Let's keep it in perspective. How damaging? That's also a strong word.
Frustrating.
Frustrating, strongish word. Mick started explaining to me the permutations of, provincial and knock-on effects for Sam Maguire, Tailteann Cup.
Basically, Cavan and Fermanagh not qualifying.
Like as soon as don't do it again.
Yeah.
As soon as you start,
I've put a document into Teams which you could have read.
Like I'm allergic to that. I'm allergic to any sports competition where it's too complicated to hold the format in your head. And I've got my arms.
It's Kevin the Nations League.
Like the Champions Cup group stages.
Yeah.
And
I haven't bothered to learn that.
Nobody
in
has.
3 or 4 years.
No, nobody has. So I've got my arms crossed. As soon as you started talking about it, I glazed over, and I just thought, I just do not like the thought of that whatsoever.
Yeah.
And I think the general public, the sporting GA loving public, if you were to stop any of them in the street and say, your house depends on your answers here, give us the lay of the land. I think most people are like, look, I'll figure it out as it comes.
Yeah, is that not okay though? Because whatever about the time of year, which we can come back to, the fact that the football, the provincial championships are on their way to being worthless. They're not. Maybe as we said, there'll be a couple of years hangover before people fully realise that.
For people who missed last night, it was you or Arthur. Maybe we all agreed provincial might start going the way of like the FA Cup, where certain big names are rested and it'll just wilt.
Yeah. Over time, I would say, yeah. And again, only for the bigger teams, for the Division 1 teams who are certain and don't have anything to play for within them. But we all have agreed for many, many years that the football championship needs a revamp where the top teams are playing each other more often and kind of akin to the hurling. And this isn't a bad system that they've come up with.
No.
So, complicated or not, we'll figure it out. We don't even need to know. Like, unless you're a Cavan or Fermanagh fan and you're wondering, is there any chance, or Cavan who have this like weird chance of getting into the, thing, but probably won't happen.
But even at that, Mick, it's fairly simple. They have to get to a provincial final now.
No, well, Westmeath can also make the Leinster final.
I suppose, yeah. That Westmeath.
No, but you know what I mean. We've literally, because there was 2 chances. Joe's point is proven,
what I'm talking about.
Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So although that the rest of us don't need to know that really. So we
Maybe
just say,
annoyed
here
because
come
as
the
a
groups, and they'll be
broadcaster,
good.
it's going to make my job more irritating. Maybe that's actually what
I'll
I'm
tell
coming
you.
from.
You just have to read your briefs.
Yeah, you need to read your briefs. And in fairness, it'll become really clear as the provincials start to whittle down which teams can qualify.
Sure.
Because we already know the Connacht situation with the Division 4 teams on that side of the draw. We already know that Cavan are going to be ranked above Fermanagh because they won the Cup.
The point is, we don't know though. Like, we do know if we bother to.
If you go into the detail, yeah.
Because
at the moment, it's pretty loose. But I do kind of like the idea. They tried to do 2 things at the one time. They tried to keep the provincial championships relevant with the bonus of getting to a final, getting you into the All-Ireland series, but also they want to prioritise the league. So we're trying to keep everyone happy at the one time. And then it becomes a little bit complicated. I think in practice it'll be a lot simpler than it is right now.
Can I go back to the championship starting at Easter and everything that goes with the shortened season, right? There's been a sort of a decision made that club players happy, county players happy, managers happy, split season's the way to go, right? I've said all along, that is absolutely fine. They should be the ones that are basically making the calls in this. The club game is super important. It was a really successful summer last year. If this is the way it is, then this is the way it is, right? I could be in favour of that. Well, I wish things weren't so polarised that like you're either in favour of it or against it, and there's a clash there either way, right? Because you have to. There's downsides to this. There's massive downsides to this. Part of the beauty of the GEA Championship, as we add more games, as the round robin has come into hurling, as it is now in the football, part of the beauty of the Championship was always the build-up, was always Clare playing Tip in 3 weeks' time. It was always, it's certain 3-4 weeks was always the number, and that was the countdown, right? Whereas Mayo win the league and they're playing Roscommon 6-7 days later, and then all these games are just going to be happening on top of each other. There's going to be Munster hurling from next week all the way through, I think, with 1 week off for 6 weeks. Then you have a week off Munster final, and you're in, and the season's over then. There's only going to be 6 teams left in the competition. It's just like it just is going to happen so quick. There's going to be no time to take your breath. There's going to be no time for to be properly considering what's happening. Everyone will end up watching their own team. and maybe watching another match on the other day. You know what I mean? And that's just kind of the way it is. There's definitely something missing from it. While it might be an overall good thing, it's the best of a bad situation because there's not enough time in the year, etc.
Arthur, I feel like you're making a grimaced face there during that point.
No, well, it's just 3 weeks, and if you lose, you're out.
Oh, I'm not talking about going back to.
But you can't spread it out. We know we can't spread it out any further. So if it's a timing thing is the issue, then what? There's no solution to that. You know what I mean?
No, I think.
I not bringing it up as something that had no solution? But I said it's something that you can still. Yeah, it's still. I think it takes away in some way.
He's
from
lamenting
the
it without looking for a solution.
Jeez, I don't think so.
And some of the solutions
You
trying
like
to
the
finesse
hard
they
and
turned down.
fast?
Like they could have got rid of the league finals. That would have created another week.
That's true.
Hurling could have dropped the semi-finals.
You like hard and fast, Arthur? Do you?
I think it's the best it's ever been. Like, it's unbelievable.
What about the lack of breathability that Michael's talking about during the summer?
Preview, hype,
Road shows.
Roadshows. We wouldn't know where to be going with our roadshow schedule.
Recovery time for injured players.
Do you not like that sense of a summer plotted out gently? Matches in the 2 to 3 week distance.
It doesn't bother me. It really doesn't bother me. But because I just think you're still getting what you want. You're still getting great games.
Mm-hmm.
You're still getting. It's just granted. I know you miss that, but this is probably a fact of the matter is most fans, say specific or supporters, were left out of that to begin with. It didn't. You weren't factored into it. There was no So from my perspective, growing up in Sligo or whatever, there was 1 year really where beyond Connacht, in 2002, got to an All Ireland quarter final. And a few more after that between getting into Connacht finals and stuff. But you're never part of the national discussion. So there's no change now. It's grand, you're all part of this grand big melee and everything's kind of played out. But that's no different. So there's no losing anything. I always kind of feel like those big days were for big counties and those big kind of bring into a Kerry whatever match. It's yeah, okay, fine. They'll still play, we'll still watch it. But the hullabaloo and stuff like that kind of up for the match revelry is that excluded most people all the time. So it doesn't. I don't think anything's been lost. I think it's just that's personally anyway.
Yeah,
I'd happily exclude myself from watching up for the match anyway.
We should talk about Up for the Match tonight.
No,
it's like tangent.
Please no.
July,
yeah. We are out of time. We will be back in the not too distant future. My thanks to Will, Michael, and Arthur. That was A Slight Tangent. You can download it in the Off the Ball daily feed.